Hello, this is Shan Chandrasekhar welcoming you to another delightful part of our programming. As part of the Achievers, we featured some of the finest, highly accomplished people from around the world. We are very delighted to present an outstanding Canadian who has made a great contribution to this country. He's a man of international stature, Dr. Dave Williams, the Canadian astronaut who is now the President and Chief Executive Officer of a hospital. Here's Dr. Dave Williams. Take a look at this.
I've had a very exciting career, a background that's taken me from underwater to outer space, working in emergency rooms, working in critical care environments. I've been very fortunate to have seen the planet from a very unique perspective.
Dr. Williams, what a pleasure to see you.
Thank you so much for having me on the show.
And our hearty congratulations to you. From what I've heard, under your leadership, South Lake Regional Health Center is flourishing and it's doing extremely well, I believe.
Well, thank you very much for those kind words. It's not really me, it's the whole team. You know, we're very blessed to have a team of over 4,500 staff, physicians, nurses, volunteers committed to delivering shockingly excellent experiences to our patients.
It's incredible. Like, we'll come back to your medical profession. I've interviewed all kinds of people. I've interviewed many politicians, prime ministers of nations, presidents of nations, and biggest of corporations. I've interviewed their chairmen of the boards. But it's the first time in my life I'm actually interviewing a real live astronaut.
Well, I'm very honored to be here and thrilled to be part of that illustrious company. You know, I've been very lucky. I consider myself a totally average individual that was in the right place at the right time and was lucky enough to have my dreams come true.
Well, you're being very modest. I think to become an astronaut is probably a dream of millions of youngsters. Now, when you were growing up, what was your ambition? Because you were at McGill, you did your bachelor's at McGill, you did your master's at McGill, and you have your doctor of medicine at McGill as well. At what point in your life that you really felt that you wanted to be a space explorer?
Was when I was 7 years old.
Wow.
In fact, a couple of weeks before my 7th birthday, I watched Alan Shepard lift off to go into space. This was in 1961. The television was a small black and white with the grainy images everywhere, and you know, you listen to the audio of the final countdown, and then on liftoff, when they say the clock has started, it was absolutely incredible. I said, that's what I want to do.
Wow.
Yeah, but I was told, you can't. Because in those days, Canada did not have a human spaceflight program. We were the third country in the world to have satellites in space, but we didn't have humans flying in space. So I went from having a dream that seemed impossible to being able to pursue my dreams, pursue my beliefs, and then ultimately have a chance to fly in space.
NASA is an extremely choosy, conservative, high caliber organization. Their selection criteria and process is extremely strict. Among the thousands and thousands of applicants who tried to get into NASA, from what I heard, you were actually chosen. That's an incredible testament to you. So tell me about that.
So again, I would say I just lucked out. You know, from 1961 until 1992, I held on to that belief that I would be able to fly in space. And I think one of the things that I've learned is don't let others define your dream for you. You have to believe in yourself and what you're able to achieve. So in 1992, I applied to become a Canadian astronaut with 5,330 other Canadians, 600 applications from kids less than 10 years of age, which I think is fantastic. And then they took a final group of 20 to Ottawa, and from there they selected 4 of us, myself, Julie Payette, Chris Hadfield, and Mike McKay.
Wow, what a team, the 4 names that you mentioned. In fact, I remember Julie Payette because she received an honorary doctorate at York University.
Oh, excellent, yeah.
So it was such an honor to meet her as well.
Yeah.
Now, in your case, you were also attached to McMaster University. You were involved in doing some very high-level research there.
I was the director of the McMaster Center for Medical Robotics, understanding that the application of robots in medicine is much broader than just the specialty of surgery. And I did that for 3 years before I became the CEO at South Lake.
Wow. Go back to your space travel.
Yeah.
What was that first mission like?
Yeah.
What was involved in the training process?
So that mission was a research flight called NeuroLab, dedicated to understanding how the human body and the nervous system adapts to being in space. And we had experiments from all over the world. And of course, we were trained to be the graduate students for all these amazing scientists worldwide. And it was up to the crew to make sure that we were able to do those experiments successfully in space.
687 hours you were in space.
Yeah.
And whopping 17 hours, you set a world record, if I remember right at that time, actually in your spacewalk, because you were fixing the space station.
Yeah.
That's an incredible process. So tell me about that.
It was really quite amazing. The first space flight, I'm a research scientist. The next space flight, I'm a construction worker, helping build the most complex piece of technology ever built in the history of the human species. And to do that, I had to go outside and do 3 spacewalks, setting the Canadian record. My second spacewalk, I spent about 6.5 hours riding on the end of the Canadarm. And you can imagine how proud a moment this is for me as a Canadian. I've got the Canadian flag on my shoulder, the Canadian logo on the side of the Canadarm. I'm hovering over the payload bay of the space shuttle, looking at the Canadarm and the space shuttle. It was really an incredible moment.
The first time that you decided to take off on that flight, was there any last minute thought, did you ever feel, oh, did I make the right move?
Absolutely no question. The last thing we do before liftoff of the space shuttle, close the visor on our spacesuit, turn on the oxygen in the spacesuit. That takes place 2 minutes before liftoff. So I asked many astronauts, what do you think about in that 2-minute time period? Some people think, oh, it's the longest 2 minutes of my life, and other people think it just flies right by. For me, I had to turn on the cockpit voice recorder, and I did that. I remember looking out the overhead window at this beautiful blue sky, thinking, what a fantastic day for a launch. And then at T-minus 15 seconds, all of a sudden I had this amazing insight going, in 15 seconds, you're going to be sitting on top of a controlled explosion. And you can't get off the space shuttle at this point. And by the time I was sort of thinking about that, it was T-minus 6.6 seconds, the main engine's ignited, and then you're going for a ride. And you know you're going someplace really fast. Hopefully you're going to end up in orbit.
So the moment you reach the first level, I guess the rocket detaches itself, am I correct?
Yeah, the solid rocket boosters come away about 2 minutes into flight.
And after that, then you're being propelled out into space.
Yes, with the 3 main engines. It's absolutely amazing.
What was it like for the first time for you to see the planet that we live in from that far and with a different perspective?
It's absolutely unbelievable. No matter how much training you do, no matter how many photographs you've seen or movies you've seen about being in space, when you arrive in space for the first time, it's this amazing sense of freedom, just floating around very gracefully, looking out the window back at this beautiful blue oasis, our planet cast against the black, infinite, hostile void of space. You realize there's no magic boundaries between countries. There's no lines drawn anywhere separating one of us from another culture and things. We're all in this together, and
Brilliant.
It's absolutely amazing.
Now tell me a little bit about collegiality in the space station. There's just a handful of you who are all there together, and I guess it's all weightlessness completely, right?
Yeah.
So what is the day like for you? Everything around you just floats.
Yeah.
So tell me about that.
So you live and work in this unique environment, and we're all there together. It doesn't matter which country we come from. We explore space on the behalf of humanity. And that's something that's really quite incredible to be able to do, is being out there in space and understanding that we represent the human species. And whatever cultural background you have, whatever your mother language is, we all work together to be able to achieve these truly remarkable objectives when we explore space. So things like, we get up in the morning just like on Earth, and we have our breakfast, brush your teeth, get ready for the day, work about 16 hours during the daytime, then it's time to go to bed again, and you sleep 8 hours, and the cycle repeats itself for the whole time that you're in space.
Wow. Tell us about your spacesuit. I understand it's an extremely complex sort of design that's being done, because especially if you're doing a spacewalk, you have to have some tubes of water running through. So tell me about the design of the spacesuit and the training that goes behind that as well.
So when we go outside to do a spacewalk, we're working in this extreme vacuum of space. And in fact, we're inside our own spacecraft. It's a spacesuit, but it has all the same systems that a spacecraft would have. It has a pressurization system to maintain the pressure of the 100% oxygen environment of the suit, has a communication system so that we can be able to communicate back to the space shuttle, the space station, or mission control on Earth. And it's got a whole series of monitoring systems that are built in so we can check all the different parameters of the suit. And of course it has a cooling system built in as well. And that's one of the most fundamental aspects of a spacewalk, that it's very easy to build up heat inside the suit because there's so many different layers of the suit and things that retains heat really well. So we actually have to actively cool you down when you're working hard out in the sunlight.
The psychological framework of people who go into space, what are the additional pressures you face when you're out there in space?
You know, one of the unique aspects of being an astronaut is it's a fantastic opportunity to work with people who are dedicated to excellence, to doing their best. And one of the things we love doing as astronauts is taking on seemingly impossible challenges that are hard to do and achieving them while working together as a team. Hubble Space Telescope repair is a great example of that, where the astronauts work very hard together as a team, go out in space and pull off that very complex repair and servicing of Hubble. Building the space station, the same example when we were doing our spacewalks, building the space station, incredibly complex tasks that we're able to do together as a team of 2 astronauts outside, supported by a team of literally thousands of people on the ground.
Fabulous. You as a physician, when you were back on Earth, you had to go back to not as exciting as, of course, being in space, but equally challenging and important function in the field of medicine. What is the similarity that you have found between medical practice and the knowledge that you gained from NASA by being in space?
Yeah. When I was growing up and I realized that it might be a challenge for me to become an astronaut, I actually started scuba diving, and my dream went from outer space to inner space, and I thought maybe I can be an aquanaut and live and work underwater. Then I became very passionate about how does the body work in extreme environments? How can the human body function underwater in space at the top of Mount Everest? So I'm actually, yes, I'm an astronaut, but fundamentally I'm an exploration scientist. And one of the remarkable aspects of being a doctor and having practiced medicine on Earth before going to space is I actually was a doctor in space as well. And I practiced medicine in space, but it's a different branch of medicine called space medicine. Understanding how we need to support humans as we go forward and explore space, going beyond Earth orbit, whether it's back to the moon and on to Mars. Ultimately, we'll need medical capability to support human missions like that.
If I remember right, you spent a fair amount of time living and working in the world's only underwater lab. So tell me about that particular concept and that experience.
Well, you know, life is full of many ironies, and I dreamt of being an aquanaut after I discarded the astronaut thing because people told me it wasn't possible. Then I thought, well, I'm going to be an aquanaut. And Joe McGinnis, Canada's famous diving doctor, was one of my heroes. Jacques Cousteau, another very famous underwater explorer, was, you know, my hero as well. And ironically, I went and flew in space as an astronaut before I became an aquanaut and lived and worked underwater. I started scuba diving when I was 12 years old, and had to understand all the physiologic changes that take place in the body. As part of that training, years later, in 2001, I was doing a research mission on board the Aquarius Undersea Research Habitat, and that's when I got to meet Joe McGinnis for the first time underwater, which was really incredible.
You were also stationed in Houston, Texas, in a major project again for the United States, and you also spent time with NASA in their head office in Washington as well. Tell me about all that experience.
So between my first and second space flight, many astronauts are assigned collateral duties working as a Capcom, communicating with the space station or the space shuttle. In my case, I was actually assigned to be a Capcom.
What's a Capcom?
A Capcom, it stands for being a capsule communicator. So it's the astronaut that sits in mission control and communicates with the crew in space. So I did that for about a week, and then the center director at Johnson Space Center, George Abbey, reached out and asked me if I would be the director of life sciences, space and life sciences at Johnson Space Center. Turns out they had been doing some work behind the scenes with the Canadian government to get me seconded from the Canadian government to the US government, and I did that for 4 years, and during that tenure I also became the Deputy Associate Administrator of the Office of Spaceflight in Washington, working in an area of crew health and safety. So it was truly remarkable, and to me demonstrates the benefits of international collaboration.
From your space flight, when you were returning back to Earth, I understand the Earth shield at that time, the heat was a very precious moment, I believe, and very risky at that time. So what was your experience, coming back into Earth from there?
Yeah, it's an amazing experience. The temperature outside the space shuttle, as we re-enter the Earth's atmosphere, just simply the friction of the atmosphere against the surface of the space shuttle results in temperatures over 2,000 degrees.
Wow.
So you're inside a fireball. You're inside this orange flame that's engulfing the space shuttle. You look out the window and all you see is orange surrounding you. And interestingly, inside the space shuttle, all the thermal control systems work really well, so you don't feel the temperature. It feels quite comfortable. You're actually wearing your spacesuit at the time, and you've got your cooling garment working properly, and it's really quite remarkable.
Well, at this point, I want to talk to you and congratulate you on all the outstanding recognition and awards that you have received. You were inducted into Canada's Aviation Hall of Fame,
Yes.
NASA Outstanding Leadership, the medal, the Rotary Achievement Award. You've also been a board member of the Institute of Cancer Research, Science Ambassador in Ontario Science Centre, board member in Surgical Innovation and Invention, and member of the board of the Spinal Cord Injury Network.
Yes.
Incredible accomplishments. Hearty congratulations to you.
Well, thank you very much.
And let's just go one by one. The award that you received being inducted into Hall of Fame, again, that's a very precious moment. So tell us about that.
It was a really great honor, and I am a pilot as well. And in my family, I'm the junior pilot. My wife is a senior captain for Air Canada, currently flying the Dreamliner, the 787. And
wow.
I have probably 1,400 hours of total flight time. I've flown supersonic jets, but my wife has literally thousands and thousands, probably around 17,000 flight hours. So when I was inducted
Congratulations, that's remarkable.
Yeah, it is. It's very remarkable. And, being inducted into the Aviation Hall of Fame, it's nice having that recognition as a pilot, but it's also, I think, a tribute and recognition to what I've been able to do in the space program and, going farther and higher and being able to achieve those sorts of accomplishments in space. But it was really a true honor.
That's wonderful. Well, let's come back to your appointment as the President and Chief Executive Officer of South Lake Regional Health Centre, one of the largest hospitals in the province of Ontario, probably the largest of its kind in the York region. It's an incredibly progressive hospital with massive, I think the budget is well over $300 million. And you've done a fabulous job from what I understand. Tell me about how you plan to integrate your knowledge of medicine and technology.
So at NASA, one of the attributes of a large organization that explores space is a culture that's committed to safety and quality, but embracing new technology. And broadly speaking, that's what I strove to do when I came to South Lake in 2011. Embracing a culture that focuses on safety and quality and a commitment to putting patients first, but at the same time, a culture that embraces innovation. And at South Lake, we've done a number of world's firsts, and in cardiac electrophysiology, dealing with abnormal heart rhythms and taking new and novel technology, being able to use that technology to create better outcomes for our patients.
There are certain terminology here that I'd like to go over with you. The process that you learned through NASA, process solutions, software development, and computer-assisted surgery. Tell me about the significance of these terms in the hospital setting.
Yeah. So over the last 15 to 20 years, the practice of medicine, in particular the practice of surgery, has been changing. And right now we're performing what we call minimally invasive or keyhole surgery. And we're doing this using precision tools to be able to perform precision procedures in patients. As such, there's a role for computers. And you can then start to envision a situation where we have computers that are part of robotic systems that enable robots, surgical robots, to assist surgeons in performing specific surgical tasks. Right now, we're not thinking about a robot just doing surgery by itself.
Right.
Right now, we're looking at the interaction between the surgeon and what the surgeon can do using a robotic device to assist the surgeon. But in the future, we'll be looking at things like image-guided, integrating complex medical imagery with robotic surgery to perform precision tasks and get better outcomes for patients.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
Hello again.
Hello.
How are you?
Pretty good.
Okay, but can you do this with your hand? Open in and out. There you go. Very good. Excellent. Excellent. Were you able to eat something today or not yet?
Yes, I finally got some solid food down today. So far, I've kept it down.
Able to see it. Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Talk to you guys later.
Now, you specialized in spinal cord injury, and you belong to the board of that particular organization. You're one of the directors of the board. Is that becoming a more serious and acute problem in Canada in terms of spinal cord injuries? Is that as a result of skiing, skating, more sporting activity, outdoor activities? Is that what it is?
Yeah. Well, Rick Hansen is a very, very good close personal friend, and many years ago Rick asked me to be on the board of the Spinal Cord Injury Translational Research Institute. And that's a big name, but basically it focuses on doing research that will improve outcomes for patients with spinal cord injuries, develop technologies, assistive technologies to assist patients with spinal cord injuries, but ultimately search for the cure. And of course, like many things we do in space, some people say that's impossible. And needless to say, with our current understanding of how the central nervous system repairs itself, it appears impossible to be able to get the spinal cord to regenerate and things. But I think with new research, new technologies, thinking about using stem cells and things, we may be able to achieve breakthroughs that will help patients with spinal cord injuries.
As an astronaut, you developed such a close rapport with your colleagues. You may not have been in the same mission, but when you lose some colleagues of yours in the industry, what kind of an impact would that have on you? I'll give you an example of Kalpana. She was such a promising astronaut, and we lost her. You knew her personally, from what I heard.
Yes, Kalpana and I trained together as astronauts. We were in Group 15 or Class 15. We started training as astronauts in 1995 together. So she was a classmate. And you know, just like when you go to school, whether it's a primary, secondary school, university, you become very close with the people you go to school with. And she was a great friend, fellow pilot as well, fellow scientist, engineer, and truly a remarkable individual. And it was so tragic when we lost STS-107, and I lost 3 classmates and 7 very, very close friends. It affects you personally, you know, when you lose individuals like that. But after we lost Columbia, you know, we in the space program sat back and said, what would the crew want us to do? They would want us to continue to explore. That's what we do in the space program. And, you know, I think the legacy of my colleagues and of Kalpana and things is that we're going forward exploring on the behalf of humanity, and we will leave low Earth orbit. We will go beyond the orbital altitude of the space station, whether it's back to the moon or on to Mars. You know, all the achievements of every human that's been in space will help us get there. Kalpana was an amazing individual, and I consider it a great honor to have been able to train with her and to be able to call her a friend.
I was a student of Marshall McLuhan. I did some postgraduate studies under him. He was an incredible human being, and he was able to foresee the future in many areas. Not only media is the message. He wrote about Gutenberg Galaxy, and then he wrote about the global village.
I come from a 19th century country, Canada, and this gives me a great advantage in looking at the 20th century.
Well, obviously his ideas are complex. I mean, he's an intellectual.
A special kind of intellect.
And his ideas are in the realm of intellect. They're complex ideas.
When you went to space and you looked at Earth, it was fascinating that you made a statement earlier. From there, you cannot think of differences. When you were out there and you were looking at the world, what kind of an impact did it have on you with the differences that exist in this world?
Yeah. You know, I think one of the things that Marshall McLuhan was able to do and capture in such a short phrase is the essence of the future of humanity. We are all in this together.
Right.
And when you go to space and you look back at the planet and you realize that yes, there's obvious continents and there's obvious bodies of water, and all of these continents are made up of countries that have names, we truly are all in this together. There's no magic lines on the Earth as you look at it from space. And you understand that, you know, humanity is made up of many, many different cultures. And in fact, I've trained all over the world with trainers who speak multiple languages and things. And one-on-one, no matter what your background is, people do really well together. And that's something that we understand when we explore space. And the other element of being in space and understanding that this truly is a global village is when you see the impact that pollution is having, and how air pollution from one continent will get captured in the winds aloft and go between continents. And you can see the effects of water pollution and things. And it makes you realize that we're all in this together from that perspective as well, and we have to protect our planet for future generations.
On the glamour side of the industry, in the movie industry, you have a friend, Tom Hanks, and possibly you may have discussed the making of Apollo 13.
Yes.
Tell me about the influence of the motion picture industry on the space industry.
You know, it's very interesting. I think broadly speaking, the motion industry can lead the space industry. And we think back to the 1960s and Stanley Kubrick 2001.
A Space Odyssey.
A Space Odyssey. And you're looking at rotating space stations and you're thinking, when is that going to happen and things. Yeah. And you know, I thought, for me as an astronaut, I always want to be able to use the term, Hal, open the pod bay doors, right? But you know, I think much of what's captured...
Beam me up, Scotty.
Beam me up, Scotty's even better.
Beam me up, Scotty, get me out of here.
But that science fiction is, to a certain degree, becoming a reality. You know, now we've got the ability to go forward and explore space through holographic images. We can beam people, not real people, but we beam their holographic image back and forth and things. And I think what's really exciting is watching those movies kind of leading where we're going, but at the same time, once we've been there, those movies then document and capture the reality of what it's like, and Apollo 13 was brilliant in doing that.
May God bless you.
Thank you.
It's been such a pleasure having you in the program.
Real pleasure being here as well. Thank you so much.